back to the Kindling Dating channel. I'm Eimear, your straight talking dating coach, and today I am chatting with Daniela.
Hi,
Hi, thanks for being with us today.
thanks for having me.
Daniela is a trauma-informed hypnotherapist, mindfulness teacher, and writer, and
Yes,
founder of
women make sense.
Women Make Stories. And Women Make Stories is a purpose-driven business that teaches people about meditation, mindfulness, journaling.
And then hypnotherapy with clients. Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
um, and you say that meditation and writing has really helped you look after your well-being and take care of yourself. Can you
Yeah,
share more about that to give us a better
sure.
idea?
Yeah. So if we kind of like step back a little bit into what mindfulness really is about, I think this always helps to see how mindfulness and journaling can really go hand in hand. And can be really great tools for our well-being. So mindfulness is really about being present and fully aware of, what's going on within ourselves and also outside ourselves. And essentially, it's just a practice of like noticing what kind of thoughts, what kind of feelings, what kind of sensations are present in the moment time. And then we try and apply all the different attitudes of mindfulness. So we try to look at things with non-judgment, with curiosity, with openness, with trust. Obviously it's a practice, so it needs a lot of practice, right? Like it doesn't it might be like really easy to grasp as a concept, right? Like, oh, we need to be in the present moment, but then obviously we need to commit to the practice. We need to kind of like stick with it and also find what works for us so that we can actually commit to the practice. But essentially it's like about slowing down, about non-striving, and not being in autopilot mode all the time, right? So when we pay attention to how we react to things, we can also then decide, okay, if this is my usual reaction and this is the end result, because I keep doing the same thing all the time, what can I do? Can I pause for a second, just assess what's going on within myself, giving myself also the time to stop and pause and decide, how do I want to go down this route? Because we all have specific patterns. So in order to break these patterns, we need to know what our patterns are and then decide consciously, okay, I know that this route is always taking me down this destination. What if this time I try something slightly different? And mindfulness can give us this, essentially this space to decide, okay, how do I want to approach this? Maybe I can try something different and then I will feel in a different way. And then with journaling as well, we kind of like, the way I see journaling is kind of like amplify the work that mindfulness does, right? Because again, journaling offers us this space, this mental space to really explore our feelings, to dig deeper into our feelings. And I really believe that when we jot down our feelings, our thoughts, whatever is present for us, we can kind of like step back as well from everything that's happening in our mind, right? Like we always we always spend so much time in our mind and not as much in our body, right? Like our minds are very much busy every day, loads of thoughts. Sometimes we live in this bubble. So just the act of jotting things down is immediately, to me, a release, because it's like, oh, I don't have to store everything that's in my mind. I can put it down. So immediately you feel like kind of like a liberation, like just some freedom, like a weight off your shoulder, right? Because your thoughts are down on paper. And then when they're down on paper, you create some distance between yourself and your thoughts.
Yeah.
So, and by creating that distance, you can gain that clarity as well. It's like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. Maybe, you also, it helps you with the patterns as well. Like, okay, I tend to do the same things over and over. So it gives you that clarity, it gives you that focus, it gives you that perspective that sometimes you don't have, because when everything is stored in your mind, you just don't have that mental space to see. So I think we can see how the two really can go hand in hand. And again, like, I don't want to say that they're quick fixes. I'm not about that at all. But they can really teach you how to navigate life through challenges, through uncertainties, just by being essentially more aware of who you are, your thoughts, your feelings, and what you need. And I think when you're really aware of all of these things, you can then resource yourself. You can give yourself
with dating is that, we can quite often get quite a few setbacks, and you're putting yourself out there to meet loads of people, and you're only really looking for one person. So that means quite a few of those people are possibly not going to click with you. And that can sometimes mean that we take all these little micro cuts to our self-esteem because we feel like it's rejection. So can mindfulness help build up that resilience to keep going in dating?
Yes, absolutely. Well, if we think about resilience and what it is essentially like the process of coping with challenges in an effective way, right? Like effectively. And the good news is that we can learn, like as much as we can learn about mindfulness, we can also learn how to improve our resilience, how to be more resilient, right? Like we're not necessarily born with it, but it's something that we can learn in our adult life. And we can develop resilience with mindfulness in different ways. So we can go down the more formal meditations, but there is also like loads of activities, what I like to call like informal mindfulness, that we can practice to help us with this. The whole point is just for me, it's essential that people find what works best for them, like anything, right? So you're then more, if you find what works for you, you're more likely to stick with it.
Yeah.
But essentially what we want and what mindfulness can help us to achieve is kind of like helping us to go back into a place where we feel like a little bit more settled, a little bit more calmer, more confident, when we can kind of like resource ourselves. So that's what we want every time we kind of like swing to extremes, right? Like what we want is kind of like expand our capacity to then go back into this place of either calmness or neutrality, because sometimes calmness maybe is a little bit too much for certain people. So what we want is, okay, let me go back to my neutral state. And mindfulness, because of what we said earlier, can really help us with this. And I guess what we want is to kind of like develop this ability to go through stressful events in a better way, in a way where we are a little bit more in control, a little bit more in charge of, obviously not the external situation, but our ability to cope with that. So, and again, as I said before, like it all starts with ourselves. When we take the time to stop and notice what's present for us, like if we're going through a rejection, okay, like what's happening, what kind of thoughts I'm having, what kind of things I'm feeling, how is my body, because sometimes like when situations happens, we also feel that in our body, like our body feels something. So we just need to investigate and start from ourselves first, and then once we recognize what's going on, that's when we can help ourselves and resource ourselves, and then also learn from the past, right? Like a lot of what happens in dating is like you also have like this past experiences. So how can the past experiences inform what you want for your future, what you want in the moment, right? But again, I would say always start with ourselves, like deeply understanding and getting to know ourselves on a deeper level.
You said, which I've not heard before, informal mindfulness. What do you class as that?
Yeah, so it's all about all the activities like journaling, for example, or like painting or coloring or drawing or playing an instrument, gardening, reading, like all of these activities that requires you to some of them like requires you to physically like use your hands, so they're kind of like you're really into the things like baking, cooking. But essentially it's all the activities that you really enjoy doing, all the activities that you love, like your hobbies. And the reason why I think those are so important to implement in our day-to-day is because when we're doing those activities, we're really in the present moment. So there is no space for us to go into rumination about the past or worries about the future. And that's essentially what mindfulness is, right? Like when we practice, when we're being mindful, we're in the present. So those activities really help us. And because we enjoy doing those activities, we feel confident when we're doing this activity, right? So that's essentially, when we think about it, it's like, it's something that you can do. It's something that you're really good at. It's something that you enjoy, that you're confident. So those activities can really help you to strengthen, your first of all, they re-energize you because you love, you enjoy doing them. And then second of all, you feel really confident. So they can give you really a boost to your confidence, because those are like, it's, you're in your element essentially.
Yeah.
So they're fundamental. It's not just about the meditation. It's also about all of these activities that really enrich our lives.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And you also touched on like how it can make us feel back in control when we are like mindfully present. And I think one of the challenges with dating is that we feel like, because we're only 50% of the equation, obviously trying to meet somebody is the other 50%. So we quite often feel like we're not in control, and like we have no ability to control dating landscape because we're only 50%. But maybe if we feel more empowered, then might be a better experience. So is there any kind of tips that you have for that, or do you think meditation, mindfulness helps with that as well?
Yeah, I think also what's important is like you said, obviously there's like we're 50% of the equation, right? But I think going back to like being mindful, I think it's important to remember that everything also starts within ourselves and from ourselves, right? So it's important that when we go into dating, we do it in a mindful way. So in a way where we are really clear about who we are and what we want and our values. Because I think all of these elements are very, very important for us to find the person, the right inverted, person for us, right? Like, I think we need to start from us. And in a way, mindfulness can help us to reframe things a little bit, right? Sometimes what happens when we're dating is that we put a lot of weight and a lot of like power into the other person. So I guess with mindfulness, because we start from a place when we really know ourselves and we are able to also put ourselves first, it can become like a little bit easier. Like, I know that dating is very difficult, it's a roller coaster. It can be really tough. But when we practice all of this quality, when we give ourselves a lot of kindness and compassion as we navigate this landscape, which can be really tough, all of these elements then in the end can really help us. And I think because we reframe the whole thing and we start from us, I think immediately that gives you a little bit of control, back. As we said, we can't really control the whole of, how the other person is going to react or what the other person is going to say. We can't control that. But if we know what we want, what we, our boundaries, what we are willing to accept and compromise, and what it's a no for us, that immediately can put us in a position of like, okay, like I stand my ground. Like, I know what I'm looking for. I know who I am and what I want to say yes to, what I want to say no to, Yeah. And I think that really gives you some kind of like power, if we want to call it that way, that can make you feel empowered. I
love how you said about how we give almost too much power away to the other person, because I think that's one of the fundamental challenges with dating, is that we almost forget about ourselves. We're so focused on finding somebody and making them like us that we forget actually we're bloody amazing.
Exactly. Or we might put them on a pedestal and like, oh, these and of course, like, mindful dating, if we want to call it this way, it's many things, right? But I think it's about really being honest and true with ourselves. Okay, what is it that I'm looking for? What are, and again, thinking about the past experiences, what went wrong, what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy, like, and then also use all of these elements to help us, and also knowing that we're not really bypassing any difficult emotions or any negative emotions. We're really, like with mindfulness, again, what's really helpful is that we're not kind of like rejecting any of that. We're aware of all of the negative emotion, all of the sadness and the rejection, and we use that to kind of like help us and inform us to respond in a different way. So it's perfectly okay, to feel sad after a rejection. Like, we're not trying to kind of like steer away from that. It's more about like, okay, feel all the feelings, really get to know yourself, and then what can you do with those feelings now? Like, how can these feelings be somehow helpful, or even if it's just to get to know yourself a little bit better, so the next time you know how to respond to certain things. Idea
of mindful dating and being really clear about what is you want. And I guess you also said about like it's being comfortable sitting with those feelings almost and learning from them.
Yeah.
And one of the cycles that you see quite often with people with dating is it, you know, gets hard, and you know those feelings of rejection are probably quite uncomfortable. So it's like, oh, I'm going to take a break from dating. And a few rounds of doing that, I think people kind of start to lose belief that they're going to meet somebody. So is there anything we can do practical wise, with like journaling prompts that can help people believe that they're going to find somebody and kind of stay the course a bit more?
Yeah, so with journaling, I always suggest to kind of like start, especially if people like are very new to journaling. What we do in our workshops, we always start with free writing. So free writing is, to me, like one of the best forms of like freedom, because essentially there are no rules. There is, you know, you don't have to worry about grammar. You essentially just write, you know, whatever is on your mind, you just put it down on paper. So I think it's always good to start with free writing. It's very liberating. And, you know, you can just set aside like 3 to 5 to 10 minutes, whatever you have, you know, during your day, and just essentially write about your thoughts, your feelings, anything that's on your mind. But obviously, I appreciate that sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. You know, the blank page can scare people, because it's like, what am I going to write about? But I think then once you start writing, you find, oh, actually, or at least that's the feedback that I get most of the times for people who are not writers. It's like, actually, there is a lot that I want to talk about. You know, it's only when you start writing that you discover that. So with free writing, you can, you know, either just start writing about anything, or a couple of prompts is just to reflect about, you know, how's your day going? So today I'm feeling, and then you kind of like start jotting that down, or I'm wondering, and you then kind of like continue. So I think free writing is a good way to start, just to kind of like, again, do a little bit of a check-in with yourself, like, you know, like you said, if the day has been a bit heavy, or if you've been, you know, going out on dates and nothing is happening, it's another way, it's another mindful way of like checking in with yourself, with your body, with your heart. Not in a kind of like I said before, not in a formal meditation. This is kind of like an informal activity, but it's a really good practical way of doing that. And then in terms of journaling prompts, like a little bit more specific, again, I would go back to, you know, who you are like as a person again, and just for the kind of like taking charge of, you know, your position here. So I would probably consider like, what are your core values in a relationship? What are your deal breakers in a relationship? Investigate your biggest fears maybe, or your insecurities. You know, sometimes we kind of like, you know, we have so many stories, you know, in our head, right? Again, because maybe we're influenced from our past experiences, or for something that's happened. Maybe you said something, or the other person said something. So how can we investigate? What are the stories that you're telling yourself? And I think when we start from all of these places, we can really get to understand the blockers, maybe what's going on. And then also thinking about what excites you, you know, about being in a relationship. What is it that you're looking for? What's exciting? And then thinking about ways in which you can invite that energy or that feeling into your life right now. So if this is where you want to be, if this is what excites you about a relationship, what can you do in order to get there? What, you know, how can you bring those things in your life? And then also another good prompt is to think about self-care practice. As we said before, like, you know, give yourself a lot of kindness and a lot of compassion. It is really hard, and maybe even in those days it can be really harder. So how can you nourish yourself in this process? What can you do to, you know, like you said, make sure that you know, you are there for yourself. Essentially, you don't really abandon yourself in this process.
I love that. I quite often ask clients to write like a journal entry for this time next year, and visualize what it's going to be like having met somebody and what it feels like within that relationship. And in those moments where you're like, I hate online dating, I don't want to do this, you can go back to it and remember why you put yourself out there.
Like obviously like future kind of like visualization, that can be really helpful. But yeah, I think like a mix of where you are right now, what's present for you, like getting to know again like your feelings and what's going on, and maybe, you know, try to investigate the blockers if there are any, like And because I think once you know what blocks you, once you know maybe where your insecurity are coming from, it's really important to understand those things, right? Because it's only when you understand those things that you can put in place, okay, those are my obstacles, and those are the things that I can do to make sure that, you know, I navigate this better, that I can overcome these obstacles. So if we don't know, or, you know, it's really tough then to act on them, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we started talking about resilience, actually, and I skipped off someplace. But is there any meditations that are particularly good for building up resilience?
There are many techniques, so I'm going to give you three, because I appreciate that obviously meditation can be quite long. So in terms of meditation, one good meditation is the body scan meditation, which many people, I would say, maybe know about it. And it's a meditation that essentially allows you to expand your awareness of different parts of the body. And then again, because we're focusing on all those different parts of the body, then we're bringing ourselves back into the present moment. So one thing that's important to also flag is that obviously when somebody is very stressed or overwhelmed and we just simply invite them to relax, it doesn't really work, right? Like when we just say to somebody, just relax, you know, it doesn't work, right? Like it can get us actually even more frustrated. So, and the good thing about mindfulness is that it's not just about relaxation, but it's also like, you know, like we said before, it has a really active component of awareness. And that's what we want, right? Like we develop this awareness, and we're, you know, we need to question our thoughts and our emotions. So that's the element that we want to have. And, you know, and then at the same time, it can give us that pause. It can give us that moment to break from our patterns. So body scan is really good in terms of like going back into our present moment, and then going back into our body, and sometimes see that we store a lot of tension in our body as well. And then the other two techniques, one is called stop, and it's just very simple. You can use it like literally anytime, anywhere. So essentially is to think about the word stop, and then see that the S stands for the word stop. So essentially it's an invitation to stop anything that you're doing, take a moment. Then T stands for take a few deep breaths. And then if you like, you know, once you kind of like notice 3, 2 or 3 or whatever, how many breaths, you can also continue with that, and maybe just noticing just how you're breathing, you know, normally just in a friendly, open way. And then if it's helpful, you can, you know, every time you breathe in, you can say to yourself in, so that you're noticing that you're breathing in. And every time you breathe out, you can say to yourself the word out. For some people, it's useful because it kind of like keeps you, you know, present and aware of what's going on. And then the word O stands for observe. So this is the moment where we're really observing, okay, what is it? What's going on? What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What are my sensations? What's present for me? And then the word P then stands for perceive. So once we're actually observing everything, we get this kind of like understanding, then, but again, like I would always give myself enough time to observe and notice, right? Like don't rush this process, let's observe. And then when we feel like, okay, I'm ready to move on, P is for proceed, so we can go on and do something that can support us in that moment. So whether that's, you know, making a cup of tea, going for a walk, calling a friend. So once we, you know, going back to like, okay, once I know what's going on, I can give myself what I need. So stop. And then the other one is, it's a really good one. And again, you can just apply it to so many different things, and just give you that couple of minutes throughout your day to really just check in with yourself and give you that pause. And then the other practice is a self-hug practice. Again, like really, really simple, only a few minutes, but it's a somatics practice. It's a containment practice. So sometimes for people who have experienced trauma or are going through traumatic events, it can be really tough to, you know, to meditate or to go back into the breathing. So always having like some containment practice or somatics techniques can be really helpful. So essentially what we're doing is just, we're giving ourselves a hug, because science says that the brain can't really differentiate from whether somebody else is hugging us or if we're hugging ourselves. But what we produce is exactly the same. So we just feel like, oh, you know, I'm feeling like much better, right? Like when we hug people, when people hug us, it's a really nice feeling, right? So that's what we're trying to replicate. And all you have to do is simply, many different ways, but one way is you just place your left hand under your armpit over here, and then literally with your right hand, you just give yourself like a gentle stroke here. You can close your eyes. You can even like rock from side to side.
Oh my God, I love this.
And it's just like such a simple thing, really, but it can give you, you're going back into your body. You're giving yourself like a bit of a breather. Just stop whatever is going on and just allow yourself to go back into your zone, like into your kind of like inner safety, because sometimes what we need to access is our inner safety. And this practice can really give you that.
Oh my God, I absolutely love these. I try to do meditation so often, and I do journaling, but meditation I struggle with. I can do like a really guided one where I'm listening to it in my headphones maybe, but those three were just perfect because they're so kind of action orientated that I'm like, yeah, I can get down to that and do it. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like really simple practice that you can do anytime. They're not too long. Well, the body scan can be a bit long, but those two, the stop and the self hug, are just very practical. Couple of minutes. Yeah.
And then so the other challenge with dating is actually going on dates. And sometimes we can get like really nervous and really in our own heads beforehand, and that can stop us from showing up as our true selves. So any tips to get us back in the zone?
Yeah, again, I would give you like 2 grounding techniques, because I think, again, they're very practical. So one is, again, going back to somatics and containment practice. It's called butterfly tap. Super practical, again, many different ways, many different adaptations. But one easy way is to simply tap your shoulders or your chest for a few minutes and kind of like doing like this. Just a tapping, or even like you can do it like this as well, or interlocking, and just gently tapping. You can close your eyes, just focusing on the tapping, left, right, and your hands look like a butterfly flapping its wing, which is also really cool. And again, it's just you do it for like a couple of minutes, and then the idea is always like, every time you do a kind of meditation, whether it's informal or formal, is then after you're done, give yourself, don't just rush again into, what you were doing before. Give yourself a couple of minutes to check in with yourself. How are you doing? Because it might be, actually, I'm still feeling, you still have like those stress or overwhelming, feelings. Okay, let me just do it for another round. Let me do another round of butterfly tapping, for example. And I feel like the tapping is really good to calm the nerves. I've done it in so many different occasions when I felt like really nervous. I just do like my tapping. And I feel like it's, again, super practical, really helpful. Because the thing is that sometimes you're so much in your head, right? Like when we're going into a meeting, or when you are dating somebody, it's all in our head. So we get really stuck, and we keep like replaying, maybe what we're gonna say, or what we said the last time, and it's just too much in our head. So what we need is to get out of our head, and a practice like this, because it's very physical, it brings us back into our body, and it gives us a bit of a break from our mind, essentially, right? And then the other technique, again, to give us a distraction from all of the heaviness, is the 5-finger breathing exercise. And again, a super easy technique to reduce anxiety, move out of the fight or flight mode that sometimes can happen, when we're scared or tense. And again, it's a good way of bringing the attention to our breath, but also to different parts of our body. So again, all we need is our hand, stretching out like a star, like this, and then we can either start with at our pinky or our thumb, whatever we want. I hope you can see me well.
I can,
and then essentially what we do is we're starting at the bottom of our thumb, use our pointer finger from the other hand to just essentially trace up our thumb. And then as we do this, we slowly breathe in. and we arrive here at the tip. And then as we go down, we breathe out. And then we continue, essentially, we trace up our hand, breathing in and then breathing out very slowly. And we just repeat, until we trace up all our fingers, our whole hand. And then if we want, we can also do the reverse. So starting from our pinky, breathing in and then breathing out.
I'm
And I think
I'm hiding my hand in case I'm doing it wrong. I don't want to distract people.
Oh, no. But again, the whole point is to give us a moment to pause, right? And really assess how we're feeling. And just do something that it's a little bit different than just, staying in our mind so much.
Yeah. I love that, because they're both really like simple, relatively quick things that you can do, like, on your way. If you're walking there, just walk a little bit slower and do the breathing, or stop and just sit
or like just the
in a
tapping.
bench. How did you meet your partner?
Okay, so we are from the same city, Milan, the same neighborhood. So we knew each other since we were teenagers, and we were just friends. But then I moved to the UK and he lived in Milan for a few years. So nothing really happened until much later. I think it was 2013 when we kind of like started to talk again. And then eventually he moved to London. And yeah, we started to date and get together.
A proper old school meet cute.
Yeah, I mean, like, it looks like it's very easy, but going back to the point, of course, I had my fair share of like dating and loads of stories as well. Like, as I said, like it can be really hard. There are so much that can happen, but and I guess I wish I'd known about mindfulness and mindful dating back then, because it would have actually really, really helped me to navigate through this. Like, when you're a teenager, obviously you have specific feelings, and it's so it's one thing. And then when you're an adult in your 20s or in your 30s or in your 40s, you kind of like go through different stages of your life. So I guess all of these things that we talk about today would have been really, really helpful to help me as a person, to feel like, it's not that you're not good enough, right? I think that's the other thing that sometimes we can think of, I'm not good enough. And again, because I realized much later on in life that I tended to put too much power onto other people, right? Like that's the mistake, sometimes. I mean, it's a learning, right? Like it's not a failure, it's a learning. But that's that's what happened to me, I realize now, and I can see like, oh, actually knowing about all of these things could have really helped me.
Yeah, me too. Could have saved myself years.
Yeah, and just even like to be more more compassionate, to have more grace about myself. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm learning. Everybody, also knowing that everybody is experiencing this, because again, when you go through these things, you just feel like, oh, it's only me, I'll never find anybody. But I think when we embrace these things with curiosity, with openness, it can really also help us to figure out, as I said before, I think that's probably the most important thing, who we are. What we really want. And I think that's an immense learning, right? It's just our ability sometimes to not let this dating discouraging us, or kind of like making us feel we're not good enough.
And it's real case of like the process almost getting in the way of the end result sometimes with dating, I think. So this is lovely, just to bring it all back to you, and like you said, being focused on what you want.
Like your values, your boundaries as well. Like, I think there is a lot of lessons, like you really learn and grow as a person a lot when you are experiencing this. And because you experience, I guess, dating in different ways, right? When you date when you're a teenager is one thing, and as I said, like then in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it's different, because also you evolve and you're a different person, right? So I guess having those tips, having somebody sometimes like holding your hand a little bit, telling you it's okay, we all go through this, it's really important.
Well, I think we will leave it there, and thank you so much. There's so many wonderful pieces in there. But where can we find you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at Women Make Stories. And my website is womenmakestories.com. And actually I am in the process, I mean, the doors are open for my program, which is a 6-week program called Your Space 2. And essentially we're going to meet every Wednesday from the 27th of September for 45 minutes every Wednesday to just experience mindfulness and journaling. So it's just a space for people to get into the habit of, you know, bringing more mindfulness and journaling into their life and see how those tools can help us to, you know, as I said, navigate, whether that's dating or, you know, whatever that is.
Yeah.
How we can use those two practices to help us.
Great. Well, I will put a link to that in the description below so people can find you.
Perfect.
Great.
And yeah, I'm very excited.
Hey, well, thank you.